management approach. Please welcome on stage the head of corporate responsibility from Volvo Group, Malin Ripa.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Great to be here. I had to admit it's always a big task to talk in front of so many very skilled persons, and I have to say it doesn't really make it easier when I'm next on stage after this fantastic presentation by Ed Freeman. So I would like to talk about my daily work. How do we actually manage a company within an industry that are facing the largest change or transformation since we were invented? So I represent the Volvo Group, trucks, buses, construction equipment, Penta engines. We are about 100,000 employees, slightly smaller than Daimler, but we still believe we are number one. We are present in almost all markets where you are allowed to be present. So actually, what are we facing right now? I think we are facing the biggest change since the trucks or the cars were actually invented. What we are trying to understand now is how will people and goods be moved in the future. We understand the big trends in the world that will affect us. We know that urbanization, climate change, electrification, digitalization, etc., that will have an influence on our business. But we don't really know how this will look like. What we are also facing is that we have new competitors coming in. Now it's not only the automotive companies. It could actually be a company who has developed drones, for example. It could be totally different new technologies for the future. And what we try to be humble for when we're doing this is that we know that we don't really know about the technologies and we don't really know about the demand for transports. Will there be more of locally produced? Will people stop traveling? What will happen? So this is what we have to try to understand. And based on then, what is the big trends? What do our customers want? What is the legislation allowing us to do? And so on. We try to work on 3 technologies at this moment. And I think that is what most of our colleagues in the industry is doing as well. So electrification, one big thing. We all know that the oil price will increase. We will soon come to the peak of the oil demand. And we also know that climate change will impose new legislations on the vehicles going forward. Automation. When you have self-driving trucks or buses, that is also a technology that we are working on. Because we know that 90% of the traffic accidents are actually done by human beings. So this is one way to actually remove some parts of traffic accidents, but also allowing the more efficient or higher productivity, for example, in a mine. When you have done the blasting and you put in a self-driving truck, you can actually go there earlier, and you can also have the kind of measurements on how is the rock looked after the blasting. And also connected solutions. As of today, we have 700,000 connected vehicles where we can measure where are the trucks and what actually when do they need service, what is the condition, how many miles have they been, and so on. And we believe that connecting those three technologies that will actually take us further to a more sustainable transport industry. But working only on the technologies is not enough. We believe that trust is important. We believe that if you don't have the trust from different stakeholders, you will not survive. It doesn't really matter how good your technology is, because technology could be copied from someone else. And just like we heard, I think our industry is one of the industries that actually still has a decline. This figure is slightly higher than 20%. We believe that we have higher trust than 20%, but still we know that different occasions in the past, like the Dieselgate, the competition law cases and so on, that has actually damaged our reputation, but also the general discussion in the society with climate change and so on is of course also influencing. And to have the license to operate, we need to have the trust. And how to do this in practice? We have a higher purpose in the group saying that we drive prosperity through our transport solutions. And we really believe that transports are contributing to a development, and it is necessary. But of course, we have to do it in the best possible way for the society. So in our group, we work on 3 different levels. The first one, our value chain. That is really everything we do, ethics in the value chain, putting requirements on our suppliers, dealing with conflict minerals, etc., etc. You know all this. Also, working internally. That's where most companies start, cleaning up our own operations, working with minimizing the environmental footprint, being a responsible employer, etc., etc. And the newest thing now is actually responsible sales. And I think some companies have started to look into it, but it's also the most difficult part, how to interfere with your customers. When should we start asking them, but how is the working conditions in your mine? Have you done everything that you can to actually reduce the environmental footprint in your mine? But I think some companies have started to look into responsible sales. Who do we sell to? What do we sell? And how do we do business? And I think that is where we will see more focus going forward, because this is also where a lot of stakeholders has their interest. We already talked about towards sustainable transport solutions, and I think what we have to deal with here is, of course, the technology, but also new ethical issues that are coming with the new technology. Like, how is the cobalt extracted that we use for batteries, for example? Will there be enough supply going forward? Job security. What will happen to all the people who are drivers today? If you today are driving a distribution truck to distribute bread to different shops, will that job exist in the future? So we need to deal with this. My firm belief is that you will not, if you are a driver today who distributes bread, you will not be calling yourself a driver. In the future, this will be your office, and you have a storage in the back, but since the truck is self-driving, you can do your invoicing, you can sell, and so on. But we will also see we have data privacy coming up. We have so much of information about our customers' business from the vehicles, and that is, of course, something that we will see more of as well. And also, when you have a self-driving truck, who is responsible in an accident, for example? So all these kind of things will happen. Also, we see an increased demand on our role in society. Just like Ed said before, we are not an isolated island. And I think by using our resources and collaborate with different stakeholders, I think we can be much, much more resource efficient if we work together. And my experience is that we might call different challenges different things. A society might call the challenge unemployment, and we might call it lack of skilled employees. But when we start to discuss and start to understand each other's challenges and we have a common goal, that's where we can actually create much, much more value out of what we are doing. So, and also, I think on top of that, what we see now is a much more unstable world where we have new requirements on the companies. We also have to understand not only human rights, but also international humanitarian law. How can we deal with business in complex markets or challenging markets where there is a high level of corruption, where there are lack of human rights respect, and so on. And this is actually, I think, what is a big challenge for us going forward. And when I talk with my colleagues from the industry, this is an area which even not the lawyers really fully understand how to deal with. But one thing that I used to say is that please, when I talk with officials from complex markets, you can't really expect direct investments if there are a high level of corruption or high level of human rights abuses, because the risks are so high, so the transactions costs are much higher. And also, of course, this SDG agenda. I just wanted to say a few words about it because everyone talks about it. But my message would really be that business, we understand opportunities. We jump on them, and we understand. We take the 169 sub-goals, and we say, okay, this is a lot of investments in infrastructure. Great, let's jump on that, and so on. So I think business don't really have to be convinced that this is a good thing. I think there is two things. First, we need the meeting points, the kind of I used to call it like a Tinder for this kind of projects, and the different actors. Because today we don't really know how to meet. And the second thing is that don't just focus on the opportunities, because we will not have a sustainable world if we forget about, for example, the 10 principles in Global Compact. I think that is so important. And I see a slightly change towards the opportunity side, but we have to remember also the responsible business side. So just to sum up, there is a lot of uncertainties that we have to understand and focus, and I think we do that, try to do that every day, try to understand the trends, the society's expectations, etc., etc. And going forward, understanding the companies who best understands what is happening and how to transform, those are the ones who will gain the trust and be successful and even survive in the future. And just to remind you, we need to work on different levels. We need to work on the ethics. We need to be a good societal citizen and trying to enhance the agenda. And we also need to work on our core business, trying to make the core offer to our customer more sustainable. But also, as we heard about leadership, I think the most important part now for companies is really to focus on implementation. Because still, a lot of people, they can agree, but they don't really know how to actually handle this. And Volvo being in 193 countries, of course there are cultural differences. There are differences in legislation, etc., etc. So now we really need to focus on implementation too, because it's in the everyday decision that we actually enhance the more towards a more sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being a role model of a responsible leader. Thank you so much for driving this topic within your company and sharing your experience. This is also a little present.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you.
Milan will be around today, so you have a lot of experience, which does not really fit into a 10 minutes, 15 minute speech. So she will be around, and you can come here and during the day have a lot of opportunity to talk to each other. Super.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've often said, look, as a leader, you don't really need to make a lot of decisions. Well, you maybe need to make decisions about who you hire. That's about 100% of what you do. And the rest is trying to figure out what conversations you want your organization to have.